All right, my Bible in 365 brothers and sisters, we have arrived at the book of Habakukk. By the way, I have to tell you this. Habakukk is regarded as, of course, one of the minor prophets, and as I say all the time, there is nothing minor about his ministry. Now, the one thing that I want to say here, and it is incredibly important that you understand this, is the reason why they are called minor prophets is only because of the body of their work, the size of their writing. It has nothing to do with the content or the power that you will find, because Habakukk happens to be one of the most powerful prophetic books in the Bible, and that is for a lot of reasons. Now, there are some things that you need to understand here, and it is critical to recognize what's going on. First of all, when Habakukk is serving, when he is actually doing what he's doing, there's a series of things that are happening historically. And so we need to understand a little bit. Now, of course, I have spent a lot of time talking about the history of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah. I spent a lot of time talking about how the civil war ensued during the time of Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. And I also talked about how that civil war split the country and how it created a series of issues between both the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. And then we talked about the backsliding that was going on, of course, within the kingdom and what was happening in the northern kingdom and how they fell apart much faster than the southern kingdom. And then when the southern kingdom fell apart, there were a series of things that were going on that should probably be noted. Now, the most significant historical issues to be noting specifically during the time of Habakukk is to understand what took place. King Josiah is the one that is reigning here. Now, of course, at the time that he is reigning, the one thing that you need to understand is that Habakukk comes in probably around the tail end of Josiah's reign, maybe a little bit after that. But the reason why I'm bringing this up, because it's probably important to recognize this. When he reigns and he does what he does, he brings a reformation into the southern kingdom. This, of course, is during the time of Jeremiah, but it's not enough of a reformation in order to save the southern kingdom from judgment, as God was going to judge them using Nebuchadnezzar. And so when you get around 625, Babylon begins to grow in greatness as it declares its independence from Assyria. Babylon breaks off from Assyria, and boy, that was an ugly one. And that's, of course, around the same time where Babylon destroys Nineveh, right around 612. And then from there, it is history. That's when the first siege takes place by Nebuchadnezzar against the southern kingdom of Judah. That happens in 605 BC. That's the one where Daniel is taken away in. Then you have the 595 or 597 BC. Really, we always say 595, but the siege started in 597. And that siege was a terrible one as well, and that lasted several years. And of course, that was the one that Ezekiel was taken away in. And then you get to the 9th of Av, 586 BC, when, of course, Jerusalem was completely destroyed. It was burned down. It was completely desolated, and very, very sad story of what happened with all of that. Now, the reason why all of this is important to understand is Habakukk is a prophet that is watching the beginning of this happening. He's seeing it take place. And when you get into chapter 1, Habakukk is basically going to the Lord and going, why? Why are you allowing a wicked nation to come and destroy us? Technically, we're your children. We are your people, God. Why in the world would that happen? And then in chapter 2, what does God do? God basically says, listen, Habakukk, the just shall live by faith. Otherwise, translated in some of your translations, the righteous shall live by faith. Now, why is that important? Because God is telling Habakukk to mind his own business and to learn to trust in his sovereign hand, doing what he's doing for the purpose of accomplishing whatever it is that God seeks to accomplish. And folks, when you begin to get into the later history of what happened with Israel, you will understand God's mighty and sovereign hand. And what becomes very, very interesting as Habakukk goes and complains to the Lord and says what he says is that when God finally speaks up, amazing things happen. God begins to move in ways that we cannot understand because we're mankind. But God begins to do something within the heart of his people, especially when we approach the post-exilic period, meaning after the time of the exile, when we see the people of Israel returning back to their homeland and watching God do the things that he does. Now, folks, why is Habakkuk so important to us? This, in my opinion, is the consequential book to read when it comes to the subject of understanding to rest and rely upon the sovereignty of God. Many of you may be in a situation right now where you might be thinking, man, why is this happening right now? Why am I going through a hard time? I can't ever seem to get a break. And maybe you're just going through a time of just sheer difficulty. It's just hard. It's a very, very difficult time or a very difficult moment in your life. And to all of that, the one thing that I will tell you, and I think this is so incredibly important to know, is that God is not only faithful, but listen, folks, he is sovereign. And what you need to do in that time is remember that God is just. God knows exactly what he's doing. He's loving. He's kind. He always acts in our best interest. And you can rest in the fact that as you trust in God, God will always do the best thing for you. And that, in essence, is the very core of what it means when the Bible tells us that the just shall live by faith. God told Habakukk to mind his own business and let him do what he chooses to do with his people. And to that, I would say, we need to let God be what God wants to be in our lives, because the results that he produces for us are far greater than any result we would have ever tried to pursue on our own. And God is faithful. So the message of this book, the message of the words that you read here, and folks, I'm going to tell you this right now, they are absolutely consequential words. The message of this right here is to learn to trust in God. Understand the righteousness that you have been given is God's righteousness. It's not yours. He's faithful. He gave it to you. He entrusted you with it. Lean in on him and believe that his words are true, and watch him do great things. The just shall indeed live by faith, and God is in the midst of doing a great work in your life. Trust him like Habakukk learned to trust him, and watch God in the midst of the craziest time in the world. Watch God do something great. And guess what, folks? He wants to. If he didn't want to, he wouldn't give us an example like this in the Bible. So read it up, reflect upon it, pull out your journals, write down the parallels that existed between the issues that were going on in Habakkuk's mind and the issues that are going on in your mind. And recognize that sometimes God will use the unjust to teach the just a lesson. But when the just learns to trust in God, when they live by faith, that lesson always brings a great level of understanding and discernment, and yes, dare I say, great victory. So keep your eyes on the Lord. He's got great things planned for you, and use Habakukk as the proof text for why all of that is important. God bless you.